And so oats have same properties as oatmeal. Good for the heart, protein, iron, all that. And you get it in this drink.
Is this naturally sweet like this, or did you add on?
I didn't add anything.
It's nice.
Pretty sweet, right? Flavors, bursts of flavors. You'll see the flavors when we have the wild salad that you get from wild foraging. It's just totally different from what we know of as salad. And so the next preparation is salve. So you were talking about, your name again, sorry?
Regina.
Regina was talking about making salve. And so you have your beeswax, and you're going to melt it in a saucepan. And so if you want a harder salve, you're going to add more beeswax. If you want a softer salve, you're going to add more oil, olive oil. And so this is comfrey salve. So you had a smell of the comfrey infused oil, and this is the salve. I added lavender essential oil to it. And so comfrey salve is really good for cuts and bruises and acne and cold sores, pretty much everything. I added plantain, like she said. I added plantain oil to it as well, and that's also well known for cuts and bruises and bee stings and all that sort of stuff.
I want to interrupt. People that I've given it to truly say it's miraculous. That
Absolutely.
stuff from the drugstore or doctor's prescriptions have not helped their whatever.
Yeah.
Chefs with burns.
Yep.
And you put that on it and it's gone in a day or two.
And you're not interrupting,
rapid.
you're being a part of it. So that's great.
So I mean, it's not like just talk. It's
Yeah.
legit miracle. I call it miracle stuff.
Not so bad, right? The
Nicer with the
essential
lavender.
oil.
Yeah.
So you can put essential oil for fragrance, whatever you like. I've also used Egyptian musk.
So I know with the comfrey we have to be careful not to put it on open wounds before disinfecting them.
Yeah.
But I also know that the plantain, I believe, is antibacterial.
Yeah.
So does that sort of like...
You still
Maybe
want
use
to.
the oil alone first, with like a dab with a Q-tip, and then add the salve once it's closed.
Yeah, but you
Yeah,
still
once
want
it's
to, you
healed
still want to
over.
have that caution.
Yeah.
You want to clean any wound before
Yeah,
asking
definitely.
it to close up.
Maybe hydrogen peroxide or
Yeah.
alcohol.
So putting something in it like calendula, for example, is not going to counteract that comfrey
In the salve?
sealing.
With
Yeah,
the
you
comfrey?
couldn't do like a comfrey.
I don't think
calendula
you'd want to use calendula in this salve.
salve. Right.
The comfrey probably is as good as calendula. So
I think what she's meaning is these can heal something so rapidly that if you didn't get germs out, it would
Make a
heal
cause a
and the germ
problem.
would be inside and you would end
Right.
up with an infection.
right.
So another herb isn't going to counteract that. Getting the germs out and then
First.
asking your body to heal with the aid of that is the way to go.
Yeah, definitely closed wounds. I mean, like burns. I mean, it's like a topical abrasion would probably not be bad, but a cut,
Yeah.
you probably have to clean it first and let it close, and then use that.
You know, a knife cut, a puncture, you need to flush it out with
Yeah.
whatever you
And
want.
then let it close. I think that's really important before you use this. Then we're on to tincture. So this is probably what what we all really want with herbs. I mean, this will maintain your health. If you get it into your diet on a regular basis, it will maintain your health. And should you get sick, then you're moving on to tincture. So this is 180 proof alcohol. This particular bottle costs $14.99. You can, if your liquor store does not have it, you can probably ask them to order it. It took me a month to get it because they were sold out when they were trying to order it. You can also use 100 proof vodka. Smirnoff has a blue label that is 100 proof vodka, but it is $32.99 for the same size bottle. And with this is grain alcohol. It's 180 proof, So you can cut it in half and add water. So you got twice as much for half the money. So like I say, free, abundant, accessible. You always want to look for that. And because of this lovely farm, I now have my own free supply of grain alcohol. We found a distiller in Yonkers, and so I get it free now. But I got down to $14.99. It's probably as good as you're gonna get. Everclear is on the market also. I'm not sure how much that costs. You ever bought Everclear?
Yeah, it's like $23 a bottle usually.
For the size, what size is it?
That
This size?
side. Oh
Yeah.
no, that's usually what we get. Actually, the Graves. Never mind.
Yeah, but you don't know what size the Everclear comes in. Liter, half liter. Yeah, so this is what size is this? This is a 1.75 liter. So almost 2 liters. So again, back to the free and the accessible and the easy. Easy is another thing, right? This is folk medicine, so we want everyone to be able to make it and use it. We don't want to go to the pharmaceutical company and pay and may not even be able to afford it. So all medicine was originally made from plants. 30% of plants are still made from plants. 30% of medicines are still made from plants. And with the whole hubbub in South America that they're finding in the rainforest, who knows, it might be up a little higher at this point. But they do like to source for active ingredients, which is where the side effects come in. When you're using medicine, you're using the whole plant. And the whole plant works with your body to heal you. And so when they're making pharmaceuticals, a lot of the times they're using just the active ingredient. Comfrey is considered poison, considered carcinogenic, sorry. And there is a cultivated one that has a purple flower. There is the wild one that has a white flower. And so the cultivated one is the one that you want. I have been drinking Comfrey Infusion for 15 years, no issues. My teacher has been drinking it for probably about 40 years with no issues. Comfrey Infusion is good for arthritis, rheumatism. It's called knit bone, so if you have an injury, it'll rebuild tissue in your body. So it's an excellent, excellent herb, but it is considered carcinogenic by the powers that be, right? So you'll hear that, you'll find that when you look at Comfrey and when you study Comfrey. So a tincture, this is skullcap. Again, you're filling the jar, and every plants have their individuality, just like us, right? So not every plant is made into a tincture in the same way. So this is skullcap. It is whole plant in flower. It flowers around this time of year. Most of the plants I talk about today are what you would be harvesting this time of year. Excuse me. So it's whole plant in flower, filled to the brim of the mason jar, and you're pouring on the alcohol. And you're letting it sit for 6 weeks. As usual, a lot of things are about the same that way. And skullcap is a native plant, and it's a painkiller. And like I said, the shelf life is 12 years. So you will be letting it sit for 6 weeks, and then you'll transfer it to a dropper bottle. And just like pharmaceuticals, all the different plants have their own dosage. So this is my herbal medicine chest, which I carry around with me all the time. My teacher gave me an herbal medicine chest when I graduated from her apprenticeship. But then it's changed, right? Because it's individual, right? So some of the herbs that she gave me I still use, but then I added herbs that are specific for me, right? So you transfer it to a dropper bottle. And this is skullcap tincture. And skullcap, so I've OD'd on skullcap more than once. When I first used it, it's good for pain, native. And then we have vinegar. So we have oil and vinegar. This is motherwort vinegar. Motherwort is called, botanical name. Is everyone familiar with botanical names of plants? Either Greek or Latin, figured out by some dudes. you know, in an office somewhere, basically. So the botanical name of motherwort is Leonoris cardiaca, and that means lion heart. And so what part of the body do you think it's good for? The heart, absolutely. Her dosage is amazing because 1 dropper full when you're having an anxiety attack. You can take it every 5 minutes until the anxiety is over. 2 dropperfuls for high blood pressure 3 times a day, and you probably won't have results for about a month. And then if you want to go to sleep, 3 dropperfuls. It will put you to sleep in about 30 minutes. And so this is the vinegar. So you can get her into your diet on a regular basis. Motherwort vinegar, you'll have oil and vinegar for the salad. So you can try it on the salad. Whole plant, filled to the brim. Pour the vinegar on, let it sit for 6 weeks. And with the tincture, I forgot to mention, so because it's 12 years, right, you're gonna finish that liquid and then you just refill it. For
You use
12,
white vinegar?
for 12 years.
What kind of vinegar do you use?
Apple cider vinegar. Because apple cider vinegar has its own health benefits, right? You can go online and people are drinking a spoonful or a cupful daily to keep their health up. So apple cider vinegar is really good. And so that's getting her into your diet on a regular basis. And in that way, you're boosting your health anyway. So you're less likely to have high blood pressure. You're less likely to have these issues, anxiety even, you know, if you have it in your diet. That's a way to get her into your diet on a regular basis. This is sun root, also known as sunchoke, and Jerusalem artichoke. I've made mash with it, and like she said, they've cut it up in raw in a salad. I've heard raw is good too. I think maybe the cooking is what causes the issue. Yeah, grated it. Yeah, I've grated it onto like brie on an English muffin. That's really good too. But this has inulin, which is really good for diabetics, especially the white stuff, the cloudiness of the vinegar. That's the inulin, and there's like a sediment of it on the bottom of the jar, and that's really good for diabetics. So again, prevention, right, is better than cure. So getting these foods into your diet on a regular basis will help you not to get sick in the first place, right? You won't have to come back from an illness. You'll just have a healthy whole self. How you like it?
It's delicious, Sarah.
You like it? Awesome. So, any questions at this point? We can take a walk outside. You can taste everything. I have some soup here. But any questions?
I had a quick question about the tincturing. I'm not sure if it was gone over. But I'm curious about folks using different types of alcohols, and I'm wondering if that affects the quality of the medicine or if it's just a matter of tastes and budgets.
So the first thing I used was the 100 proof vodka, which was expensive. And I think that's probably the best you can do as far as making a tincture. But the grain alcohol, that's when you get into accessible and local, you know what I mean? Because Smirnoff is Russian, I believe. So I always focus on local and, you know, as close to me as I can get. So this one, Graves is in Maine, you know. So I always looked for local, and hopefully if I knew the person, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just switched over from the 100 proof vodka to grain.
I'm thinking
So it'll be a
about
while before I clear out the jar of all the vodka and then see if there's a difference.
I'm thinking about children, making tinctures and elixirs for children, and I'm thinking about flavor, taste, and like the strength of things, like just how strong the grain alcohol is. Something like 80 proof brandy or something like that. Would that?
I think in the Caribbean they use brandy. I think in France they use brandy. Brown liquor has its own political issues. So if you're ingesting the brown liquor, you're going to be ingesting all of the colonization and everything that happened that created brandy in the first place. So you have to you have to figure that part out.
Could
If you're
she
gonna
make
use
it in vinegar and then before administering it, sweeten it with honey perhaps for the kids?
Well,
If you
I
didn't
mean,
want
the
alcohol.
dropperfuls, you can add it to water. I mean, some of them are, the ones that are super bitter, once added to water is not that bad. And I think you're not going to be using as big a dosage as adults. So just like with aspirin, you're going to be cutting the dosage down for the child. And
Pizza ready. Pizza ready.
so yeah, with children, you're going to be cutting the dosage down, just like aspirin. You know, they say break them in half or whatever it is. Definitely want to cut it down. There is one tincture called Poke that is considered poisonous on the USDA list. It is native. There is cultural and bias involved here. Poke is potent medicine, so it is a potentially poisonous herb. It is considered poisonous by the USDA. The berries are what they consider poison. There is a thing called poke salad down south, and you're making it after a couple of changes of water. You're cooking the young leaves, and it's sort of like as it grows, of course, it gets more poisonous. The human teeth cannot break the seed that's inside the berry, which contains the poison. I did do a class a few weeks ago where a young boy said that he was poisoned, and in his youth was a child, I guess he was about 5, he was prone to eating poison for some reason. And so he was poisoned quite a few times when he was a child, and Poke was one of them. There have been very few fatalities. I think adults would just have extreme throwing up if they did have an issue with it, but I think children could actually die from Poke. But the tincture and the dosage is 1 drop an hour, up to 12 hours a day. After that, it is an overdose, and you can damage your internal organs if you continue the use. But it's native, right? So a lot of native plants, the flatulence with the sunroot, you know, we have cultural bias. So a lot of plants that we know of that are good and wonderful, indigenous people know that are good and wonderful, have either been wiped out or they've been placed on a poisonous list.
What is the Poke good for?
Allergies, colds, flu, wonderful. I've used it for years as allergy, and it's cumulative. So the more of it you use, the less you need.
I was gonna ask, can you continue with what you were saying about oils before, and particularly, like you said, you prefer olive oil to seed oils, and I like olive oil too, but something that can bother me is that it's a little more expensive than other oils sometimes in the store.
Yeah.
And also another thing I noticed that olive trees don't really grow around here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the preparations that is definitely tough to deal with because it comes to Greece and Italy and that sort of thing. But coconut oil is more expensive. The seed
Right.
oils, I don't think they're going to have the potency. I really don't think so.
They're just not as good for the
I
use.
just don't think they would be that good. But again, experiment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have read that they are rancid before they even leave the field.
Right.
So you have to, you might be harming yourself. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Even to use it.
And
in
these
this way.
medicines last a long time. The
Yeah.
small volume that like I make a big jar, but then I break it down to little jars and I give it to everybody. It lasts a year, a little jar.
Yeah.
So
Well,
the expense isn't as great as walking into the pharmacy and buying suntan lotion.
Right.
Or something that you're going to be
And
buying often.
And you get it into your budget. It becomes a part of your budget because it's important to you. You know.
I had arnica in olive oil, like just a tiny bottle that I would use for like inner sores. I sprained my ankle really bad, and I would put that on it, and it was really, really useful. And I mean, it was probably, now that you mention it, about like 4 ounces of olive oil altogether. And
Yeah.
It was like
And how long did it last you?
For I mean, more than a year definitely.
Yeah.
So,
So it balances out.
Right.
It definitely does. This is St. John's wort oil. St. John's wort flowers are yellow, but look at the color of the oil. I had a friend tell me that oils only last a year. Free, you know what free is.
Free last.
She said they only last a year. I went home and I saw a video. Susan Weed did a video, and she made St. John's wort. So you're making it out of the flour, and as with the oils, you're letting it sit for 6 weeks, and so she was making St. John's wort oil. She had the plant material in the jar. And because she didn't need it, she left it on the shelf. So it was like I was making St. John's wort oil at the time too, and so she had her amount that she needed for now, and she was putting it on the shelf and leaving it with the plant material in it. So she's probably not going to use it till next year. You know what I mean? So, like I said, the information trickles in, you know, and you have to make your best judgment.
You just hit
At
a
the
really
time.
important question I forgot about. I made the salve and wanted to mix made the oil, wanted to mix beeswax in, but couldn't afford it. And was waiting and waiting to get more beeswax. Someone had given me some, whatever. And it was on my counter almost a year now. And I didn't throw it out. It
St.
still
John's
has the
wort oil,
plant.
or
It still
what
has
kind
the plant matter. I never
St.
strained
John's
it.
wort?
No,
Comfrey.
comfrey and plantain,
Yeah.
and I think I put oregano in it.
Yeah,
So it's still possibly good
it's
to
still
go.
possibly good.
It doesn't look
You
bad.
know?
It, you know,
And
no.
you know the smell might be bad, but you know. So we're like I said, that's where the information is trickling in, and we're getting it from everybody. And I left when I made my jar after watching the video. I left it on the shelf too because I have that in my medicine chest and I don't need it right now. So I left it on the shelf with the plant material in it since last year.
I know the
No,
salve
so-
is
That's good
held
with
over a
vinegars
year
too, like
and been effective.
leaving plants in the vinegar.
So yeah, we don't have a shelf life. I don't have a shelf life for vinegar.
Okay.
So this is 2016. I think the oldest one I have might be 06 or 08. So every time it's empty, I just refill it. So, and you can see the plant material like catnip definitely, you know, died down to like here. You know, you can see the motherwort is super hardy and it's still in there. This is from 2016. So I haven't heard of a shelf life on the vinegars. I've emptied that and filled it every year, every spring. I have a whole counter of vinegars and I just fill them all up again. Yeah, and then flavor, like they all have flavors too. Mugwort is a really delicious, one of my first and most loved vinegar. It has kind of like a floral flavor. And then white pine is a really good vinegar too. I love that. Those are my two favorites. Motherwort has a lovely, I think, floral flavor also. And so you could probably go by taste with the vinegars. Yeah. You were talking about children. So like, yeah, you'd be breaking down the dosage anyway, right? So it'll be less. And children are very adaptable, right? So their bodies, at least for me, I should say, nettle, when I first tasted it, tasted like swamp, you know, and I was like, ew, you know, but a lot of times I give it to people and they're like, it tastes like tea, you know, and now when I think of drinking nettle infusion, I get a sweet taste right in the back of my throat because I think my body loves it. And children, especially with nettle tincture, I have a photograph, I've seen a photograph of a child reaching out for the jar of nettle infusion. You know, so children adapt quickly and they know their bodies tell them, this is good for you, take it. You know what I mean?
With
So
nettle spring,
you
it's
can,
sweeter.
you know, test that out for yourself. You know, so the dosage will be less to begin with, and then you adding water, and so it might just taste like water. You know.
Well, I missed the beginning part. And were you talking about the stinging nettle that you're referring to, the nettle? I've used it as a tea before, like naturally, but then, and I know it's kind of grows somewhat near my house, but I'll order it, like the packets it comes from like Poland, but.
Tea bags.
Yeah, but I was told that the iron amount from that, because it's mostly in the leaves, so it being infused, so it just doesn't have as much iron as it would be if you were like eating it, I imagine.
So the tea, you know, it's most popular as a tea.
Yeah.
The infusion, what happens when you hang it to dry, infusion, did you hear how the infusion's made?
Oh, no, I didn't.
So it's boiling water. It's a longer steep, basically. So
Okay.
tea is like 2 minutes. How long do you steep it?
Yeah, like 5 minutes or something.
Yeah,
not that
so
long.
this is
Yeah.
4 to 6 hours minimum. And then our,
okay.
quick rat race lives, it works out to just let it steep overnight and
Okay.
then strain off the green. And so then you get more nutrient value that way. I've had people who take nettle tea very successfully. They love it. They've been drinking nettle tea their whole lives. But the infusion is a longer steep and more. And what happens with the nettle too is that the constituents crystallize when it's dried and it becomes more potent too that way. So if you've been drinking it your whole life, it's probably great.
Yeah.
It probably has enhanced your health throughout your life. But if you want more of a more potency,
Yeah.
you can make infusion.
Okay,
with the
and
dry.
then
But then you need it by the pound. So then you're moving on into budget
Sure.
issue, right? So if you want it by the pound, you can grow it. I get about a pound a year with I had 4 or 8 feet of it. But you get a pound. What my teacher says is that you need 6 pounds a year if you're going to be taking an infusion of
Okay.
any plant. So you'd want 6 pounds a year. So then you get into your budget and what you
You're
can
talking
afford.
6 pounds dry.
Dry.
So how much would you suggest infusing at once for the 4 to 6 hours?
So it's depending on the size of the jar. You have the numbers on the side.
Okay.
So on the quart, it's up to the 8. It's 8 ounces. And then on here, maybe about the same. That's why it helps to use. So we're pints. So this is 1 pint. Up to the 1, probably, on here.
Okay.
And then you pour boiling water, boil the water, pour it on, and let it steep. And then that becomes food. Infusion is more like food than tea. You're at that level where you're getting real strong nutrients into your body.
Nettle's my favorite green to eat.
Yes, you can make nettle
Above
soup.
Swiss chard, above
Fresh
spinach, above
Tops
anything.
of nettle in the
Nettles
spring,
is-
especially for allergies. You can make nettle soup. It's really good, delicious, with some turnips and potatoes and carrots and yellow dock leaves. You can add in also.
I have driving issues when I don't think well. So a lot of times I run out of vegetables, but I can walk right outside my house and there's nettles I've let grow.
There you go.
Even in the summer, putting some of them into something, instead of the spring, I'll eat a whole bowl of them. I mean, you fill a pot, it melts down to nothing like
Yeah.
spinach, but it's sweet. It's not,
Yeah.
not
sting
even
is
for the
gone.
it's
Once
one
you
of the
cook
most
it, the sting
nutritious
is
things you
gone.
can put your hands on, but I think it's the most delicious.
Yeah.
Like you said,
Yeah.
to me it's sweet.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the summer, not so much, but it still goes in the pot when I have no
Yeah.
veggies in the
Well,
house.
be careful after it flowers. At least with the infusion, you can have stomach issues after it flowers. So harvesting nettle May 15th, middle of May.
It's
before it
flowering now.
flowers. Yeah, it flowers around May 15th. I think this year, because it was so cold, it was May 21st. But anywhere in and around there, you're harvesting it. Yeah, so
You're
some
more
people-
south than me.
Yeah.
I think some
True.
of what you're saying is
When did yours flower? You
What?
remember?
a little while ago, but it's still flowering.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So
I know, I don't
June?
remember.
Yours
But it's
flowering.
still flowering.
we were late because it was cold. Our mornings were 49 into the end of May, so it didn't flower till the 22nd. We're usually around the 15th or so.
Yeah, no, we're much later than you. Lilacs and and everybody was late.
Yeah.
So was the heron.
Yeah, unbelievable spring we had. So there's taste. We have taste. This is a soup. It is seaweed and dandelion leaves and soba noodles, which is a buckwheat noodle, onion, scallion, ginger, and miso. So you can have taste. You can use cups and just have taste if you like. You can have more infusion. You can have salad. You can have more sunroot. So come on up and start tasting. You got oil and vinegar. You got the mugwort vinegar and the oil for the salad. And yeah, that's it. And then we can take a walk outside if you like and look at stuff.
Sarah, how do you use the St. John's wort oil as opposed to a tincture?
Oh, it's topical?
You do put it on
So
the skin.
muscle aches.
Muscle aches.
The tincture is, so some things have made it, all this keep talking while y'all are serving yourselves. Some plants have made it commercially over the counter. So you can get echinacea in the health food store, you can get St. John's wort oil, St. John's wort tincture, motherwort, burdock. You can get those in health food stores. There's a really great brand called Herb Farm. It's an orange label, you can't miss it. HERBPHARM. Herb Farm. They're out in Oregon. Probably the oldest herb company in the country. 40, 50 years old at this point. Amazing. Rico Check is his name, and he has written books. He has one book already, right? You have it here. Rico Check's book? I think you have it here. It's like an A to Z of herbs or something like that. Part one, something like that. Yeah, so that is a tremendous company. Amazing. And so their brand is that orange label in the health food store. So St. John's was one of those that's made it over the counter as an antidepressant. They sell it in pill form over the counter. But you can have the tincture. You can take the tincture. I've rubbed this on my body and taken the tincture, and it is sheer ecstasy. Just unbelievable.
I'm sorry, I was preoccupied. Which tincture?
That's St. John's wort oil.
Oh, okay. That's the plant I don't know how to
Lovely. So
identify.
it has the ability to absorb into the skin and heal you. St. John's wort oil. And so like I said, the flowers are yellow, but what color is the oil?
Red.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Red.
Does it help with like joints too, or more like?
Yep.
Really?
Joint pain. I used it for back pain when I started
skip
farming.
trying to pour it
Amazing
in.
stuff.
Ooh, I
Amazing.
kinda
And
wanna
get
do
the
some of that.
tincture to take with it. Because that's pure ecstasy.
Okay, so
Joy.
that's oil.
This is the oil that you use topically, and
Okay.
then you take the tincture internally. I think it's 2 dropperfuls 3 times a day, something like that. But it'll be on the label. It'll tell you on the label how to
Okay.
take it.
Cool. I gotta get some.
So I'm gonna just go through dosages. This is dandelion. Dandelion's in your salad today. This is whole. I think it's whole plant in flour. You can do whole plant in flour, or you can do root to make the tincture. And it's 1 dropper full. It's like a multivitamin. It just promotes the optimum functioning of the body, period. I'm taking it right now for menopause because it helps to flush out the kidneys and the liver with all the extra hormones that are leaving. This is milk thistle. This is seed in alcohol. So, and the seed head, you wait for the seed head like September, and it's really prickly and hard to work with. So the jar that I used was a quart, and you only have to put about this much seed in it, which is you're totally thankful for because it's so prickly to work with in the first place. So this is really good. It supports the liver. So if you're going out drinking, the trick is to remember to take a dropper full before you go out drinking. Because it protects the liver. We talked about skullcap. That is a painkiller, native. So dandelion's been here 600 years. The Vikings brought it, had no interest in colonizing, and left it for us. So it's been here for 600 years. Milk thistle's from Europe. Skullcap is native to the United States. Painkiller. Whole plant in flour. I showed you the jar. 1 drop. Well, we're down to 3 to 5 drops, right? That's what the pain that I've learned. Poke is the root in. So you harvest roots. You harvest leaves in the spring, and then you get your flowers in the summertime, and then roots you want to harvest in the fall because all the plant energy has gone down and into the roots. So this is root. It has a giant root. The root, you can get it out of the ground. It's probably about this big. And you're going to clean it and chop it up. And with the alcohol, if you have, because a lot of you're harvesting roots, so there will be a lot of dirt on them. So you probably will have it running underwater and brushing it off to get all the mud off. So with alcohol, the water is not an issue when you chop it up and put it in the container. So if it's still wet after you finish cleaning it, that's fine. So it's root in alcohol, 1 drop an hour, up to 12 hours a day for allergy, cold, flu, you name it. amazing potent medicine, easily on par with penicillin. Easy.
Whoa.
Elecampane is a native. Poke is native. Elecampane is from Europe. I think we have some out here. You moved it though, right? You moved it from up here to down.
Yeah,
There?
that's right.
Is it a row down there next to the
It's
greenhouse?
behind the green, yeah.
Okay. So elecampane is from Europe. Root, same thing, as easily as big as poke. And washing, chopping it up, getting it into the container, and pouring on the alcohol. 1 dropper full up to 8 hours a day for cough. Probably heals the lungs. I had a very bad cough when I moved up from New York. I used to live in Brooklyn, and I moved up 12 years ago. And like the second year, I got this terrible cough, just that itch in the chest. And I was coughing for like a month. It went away for 2 weeks and it came back for another week. That was that one winter. Someone had given me elecampane in September. I had the cough in the December. Someone had given me a root in the September before that. And all I knew was to put a root in alcohol. So I had it on my counter, coughing through this one winter. And then the next winter, the cough started to come back, and I was like, I'm not going through that again. So I started going through all the books, and sure enough, elecampane was good for cough. I took it, and within a week, the cough had left in a whisper. And I have not had those issues anymore. That's a cumulative effect, and probably heals the lungs. Respiratory, good for cough. Burdock is it's just tonic. I used it, one of my first allies. I worked in Riverside Park in Manhattan, and this was all over the hillsides. And I figured, these folks in this area must have digestive issues, right? So I knew then, all I knew then was to take the leaf and put it in vinegar, because you take the leaf, you keep it on your counter, and then you take it out when you have swelling, and you heat up the leaf and you put it on swelling. And I had done that within probably a year of my husband falling and tearing his ACL. And you haven't heard sorrow until you've heard your loved one cry through the night because they're in pain. And I laid there and I was like, my God, I'm an herbalist. There must be something, And I went through the books again, and sure enough, for swelling, you heat up it's been in vinegar on the counter. You heat it up and you put it on the swelling, and it took his swelling right away. And so what happens, right, once you engage the spirit, so this was elecampane, the spirit knew I was going to have an issue. So this lovely woman was separating, she was dividing her elecampane, and she gave me a root months before I even had the issue. So the herbs are engaged with the spirit, and they know you, and they know what you need, and you'll get it when you need it. It took me a year to figure out that I could use it. On my counter probably a year before my husband was injured. And then there it was, right? So it works like that. Believe that. Magic exists in nature. Believe it. Don't let them tell you any different. And then motherwort we talked about already. Oleanaris cardiac, heart medicine. Every 5 minutes for an anxiety attack. 2 dropperfuls an hour for high blood pressure. Probably won't get results for a month, until a month. And then 3 dropperfuls for sleep. That's my herbal medicine juice. There's a broad leaf and a narrow leaf. That was in the salad. It's probably the most chewy leaf that was in the salad. At this time of year, this is the flower stalk right here. And with plantain, you get your omega-3s. And like the woman Regina was saying, you can also make an oil that's really good for cuts. Brought here by the colonizers, called white man's foot by the indigenous, because everywhere they went, this plant came up. I said that was very smart and a testament to the plant, that they would be leaving their home not knowing where they were going, and they would bring this plant with them because it had so many properties. It also has the omega-3s. So once it flowers, the seeds are black, goes to seed, and they're black, and you can harvest the seeds and sprinkle them on oatmeal and rice, and you got your omega-3s.
What it's called? It's plantain.
Plantain.
Okay. Oh.
And there's a broadleaf and a narrowleaf. This lovely lady right here is Pope.
Oh.
So just, I consider the chandelier of the natural world. Because this is what's going to turn purple, and they're just going to dangle down. This stem becomes so pink, very magenta. Not much to say except that she's incredible, potent medicine, and she can get tree size. Mine is probably about this big. I've had them 8 feet high, 10 feet wide next to my house. People tend to choke her to the ground when they see her. They don't like her. They'll come outside and you'll see her neck snapped and on the ground. So
Why did they
that's
do
how
that?
fearful, huh?
Why are they fearful?
It's on the USDA poisonous list.
Oh.
Yeah. So I had 2. I moved into a rented house. There was one on each side of the porch. And the landlady's son lived next door. And I came outside one day and he had snapped her neck. And she was laying on the ground. But then I let her get 8 feet wide and 10 feet wide and 8 feet tall. And I've had, beds of it, or I just always let her go wherever she comes. Because potent and beautiful. Native. Look how gorgeous. So part of colonization is to destroy the resources of the colonized. So that's what happens. This here flowering is amaranth.
Okay.
Really good. The leaves, I make just delicious greens. The wild is more nutritious than the cultivated. And if you get it in your garden, wild is the way to get it. When it was about this high, without the flowers, I was just popping off the tops when it first came out of the ground to make greens. I make greens for the winter. I store and freeze greens for the winter, so as good as kale easily. And then you can harvest the seeds to get iron for the winter also.
What is this one called?
Amaranth.
Oh my god.
And the leaves are what I made the salve out of. So early on in the spring, because you have to, the salve, I think I mentioned you have to let it sit for 6 weeks, right? So you want to get, I was trying to get it for a class, so I had to make sure I got it super early in the year, and so that I had the oil ready for the class. That was my whole experience with making the salve, because I wanted to make the salve in the class. So early on in the season, you can harvest the young leaves for the salve, and then you get the flower stalk around May 15th, and that's what you'll be harvesting to hang up and dry for infusion. Some people love it and they use it all the time. I think you can also use it cosmetically. I've never used it that way, but I definitely drank the tea.
What is it called?
Lemon balm.
Oh, lemon balm. Okay.
You want to stand and sit up, so you want to come in and rub the leaf and smell your finger. Native American cough medicine. Right, so we had burdock tincture, we had the vinegar for the swelling. You can harvest the root in the springtime as a tonic. People drink it with dandelion root in the springtime for tonic. You can cook the stalk before it flowers. It's biennial, so it flowers in 2 years. And so you can cook the second year stalk before it flowers. You can also cook the root as a food. It's a vegetable. Wonderful. There is a Arctium lapa, is European. Arctium minus is native to Turtle Islands.
What if it's growing like by a road?
They have not found the counts of lead or anything higher next to the road, but if you can get it away from the road, get it away from the road. But they have not found the count any higher than what's further in. So it's entirely up to you. And so what it comes down to really is if you can't find it anywhere else and it's by the road and you need it, take it,
I've been waiting for it to spread or whatever.
Flower.
It's still right by
That's quarters in?
for years and years. Anyway.
You can transplant it.
Yeah,
I transplanted it successfully last year.
Okay.
So
Is
you
it
can
true that
transplant.
burdock is the one that has like it's a 2-year cycle? Like it has its first thing, and then the second it
It's
has
just
its
leaves the
reverse.
first year,
Yeah.
and those burrs that stick on you when you're hiking.
Is there
That's
like,
burdock.
do you have
Hmm.
to use it within that first year, or can you use it after
For the
it's flowered?
tincture, you want the first year.
First year.
Because the
Okay.
second year, once it's died back,
Uh-huh.
the root is slimy and rotten. So for the tincture, you want the first year root. This is lamb's quarter, highest level of iron of any green. Delicious. Come up, pluck one. It was in the salad. Tasty. Tastes kind of nutty. One of my favorites. You can make pesto out of it. Enough said, it can get shrub size. I've had it shrub size.
Had huge
Very tasty.
batches of
This is the dreaded milk thistle in flower. The flower will dry on the stalk. But look at that beautiful leaf. It's like someone spilled paint on it. First time I grew it, I couldn't believe my eyes.
I didn't know it was very
So-
good like that.
Those are the flower heads that you're gonna want for the tincture. And they'll be dry. They'll be dry in September.
But the flowers are this
And-
purple, spiky, beautiful.
Yeah, that's the purple. Most thistles have that purple. Burdock has that purple flower also. I have had them dried in a bag, the flower heads, since 2012 when we planted them this year. And we still got some seed. And it's pink, it would have been pink. And you harvest her in flower. Just cut it down at the base. She's perennial, so she'll be back. So that's Mother One, past flower. She flowered in June, I believe.
Yeah, smells good.
That's purslane. You can break it off and give it a taste because it's yummy.
So yeah, okay.
Delicious, very good for the digestion. Salicylic acid helps. Succulent, delicious. Really good in salad. She grows like crazy. She's all over the place here. She'll come up in your garden on her own. No worries.
And what's that one called?
Hmm?
What is it called?
Purslane.
Purslane.